I'd like to talk about potential obstacles for people in seeking out therapy or choosing to engage in a course of therapy. These are psychological obstacles that I've gotten a sense of in the 6 years that I've been doing this, and usually come up in the first appointment or two and kind of working with someone. One of the things that often comes up is this sentiment or feeling that coming to therapy implies that the individual is weak, that the person almost feels guilty for coming in here, as if it's a acknowledgement that they just couldn't deal with their problems on their own, and so there's this kind of sense of failure in having to come in here. And what's interesting about this is that it sort of suggests that that psychologically strong individuals or emotionally strong people are people who can deal with their feelings on their own. They can be independent, they're stoic, they can kind of take that stiff upper lip sort of mentality, just kind of soldier on through their issues. What's ironic here, from my point of view, is that it's the latter kinds of individuals, right, who tend to be, they're not really thriving necessarily, but they've gotten really good at coping. They're kind of survivors, in some sense of the word. So they tend to internalize affect. They have a difficult time letting their guard down or being vulnerable. They don't ask for help or assistance or lean on other people. And in my view, these kinds of people tend to be a little bit fragile, right, in how they go about dealing with different things. Stresses and worries and emotions, are kind of dealt with in just kind of one way, and that's kind of internalizing, ignoring it, disconnecting from it, and so on. In contrast, I think an emotionally strong individual is going to be a person who can be aware of their feelings, that they can experience them without having to disconnect from them, without having to shut them down, and also without being totally overwhelmed and incapacitated by them. They can be vulnerable, they can let their guard down, they can reach out to others for help and support to help them kind of understand or make sense of their own emotional life and so on. This is, I think, just part of being a good, healthy, or having a healthy personality. One of the other things that people will say when talking about their issues or concerns or their feelings is they'll express a sentiment that my problems or my issues aren't all that bad. Other people have it far worse than I do, and perhaps there's no need for me to really be here. I feel bad even being here. Other people are perhaps more deserving of the time and energy in engaging this stuff. Now, this is curious because, in a way, it sort of implies that potentially everyone in the world, can be categorized according to their level of psychological distress, right? Such that maybe some poor kid in a third world country is the only one that really has a right to complain or talk about their feelings, or maybe even has a right to talk about their issues with a professional, with a psychologist. Now, hopefully this sounds like that doesn't make sense, and I would invite people, if you do have that intuition or you have that thought, I'd invite you to maybe kind of challenge that a little bit. Maybe wonder, well, where does this thought come from? If that doesn't make sense, if we all have a right to talk about these things that cause us distress, where does this gut feeling come from? What's that about? Did I learn it somewhere potentially? The last thing that I'll talk about is the sentiment that people sometimes express, that coming into therapy and having to consult with a psychologist somehow implies that they're stupid, right? That they should have known something, they should have been able to solve their problem or recognize what it's about, and should have been able to address it on their own, right? It's kind of related to that sort of last obstacle about being weak and not wanting to lean on people and so on. But what's interesting here is that it sort of frames therapy as something that, again, the expert clinician, I talked about this in another video, is supposed to educate the client, to tell them something, to talk explicitly and abstractly about, how to resolve this thing. And again, I don't think that's what therapy is primarily about. I think it's that people are feeling stuck in some way because of something operating on an implicit level, just outside of their awareness. They can't quite put their finger on it, and they need the help of a clinician to work collaboratively with them to help identify what it is. So it doesn't in any way suggest that a person is unintelligent, and quite the contrary. I think it is an intelligent person that's going to realize, hey, I need an objective person to kind of help me out with some of these things.